Okay, hold on 1 second. We're going to start with chapter 19, verse 1. And we're talking about Shnei Malachim. There were two angels who came to Sodom. The two of the angels came to Sodom, vayera. So Rashi is interesting. It does not say earlier that the men who came to Abraham were angels. It just says that the men who came to Abraham were men, but now it calls them angels. So earlier it just calls them men. Now it calls them angels. That's why Rashi says that earlier, that those men who came to Abraham were angels, because earlier it calls them men. We're chapter 19, verse 1. It never called these men angels, but now they're called angels. So the pasuk says, "Vayavo shnei malachim Sodom," but then you have to explain. Well, 1 second. If these were the same men who came before, then how come before there were three and now all of a sudden there were two? That's a problem that Rashi has to explain. So it says, "Vayavo shnei malachim Sodom ba'erev." The two angels came to Sodom in the evening. Lot yoshev b'shar Sodom. Lot was sitting at the gates of Sodom. Vayar Lot, and Lot saw Vayakom l'krasam. He got up to greet them. Vayishtachu apayim arza, and he bowed down to the ground. So now what happens? Shnei malachim, Rashi says, echad la'ashchit Sodom, ve'echad la'atzil et Lot. Why were there two angels? Why do you need two angels here? One angel was to destroy Sodom, and one angel was to save Lot. V'hu oto sheba'u rapot et Abraham. This angel who was there to save Lot was the same angel that had come to heal Abraham. V'ashlishi, and the third angel, because Abraham had three angels that came to greet him, according to Rashi. The third angel, Sheba'u v'aseret Sarah, who came to tell him about Sarah, kibin she'asa shlichuso nistelako. Once he carried out his shlichus, his mission, he left. Now, okay, so this is a complicated idea. So first of all, Rashi said earlier.
How do you have two shlichus?
What'd you say, Pitzal?
How do you have two shlichuses for one malach?
Right. So Rashi said earlier that the reason why do you need three angels? Why do you need three angels? If the guy's an angel, one angel could do the task. So Rashi says earlier that one angel can't do more than one mission. A human being has the potential to do so many things, creative, like to deviate from what God told him to do and try to do even better. But an angel can only do exactly what God told him to do. So now we have a problem. This angel is doing a second mission. First, his mission was to heal Abraham, and now his mission has morphed into he also has to save Lot. But the third angel who had visited, who had told Sarah she's going to have a child, he did his mission, he left. But so now the question is that Betzal is asking, how could this angel do more than one task? So we have to say the pashtus is the I guess the simplest explanation is that it's the same. He's an angel of healing, and once he finished his task with Abraham, he came to save Lot. Or you could say the other way you could answer it is that if he would have healed Abraham, but Abraham would have heard that Lot was captured, then Abraham would have immediately been sick again. He wouldn't have completed his mission. He would have gotten so sick from the distress. I read now today that a lot of people are coming to that there's an increase in Barzilai Hospital in the brain hemorrhages during this time. Probably people have anxiety without question. So without question, they have anxiety, and that anxiety is causing, without question, it's causing tremendous problems. So I had the opportunity when I was in Israel to visit the kibbutz where Dan's cousin acted heroically. It was called Kibbutz Nir Oz.
No, she was in Nirim.
Oh, Kibbutz Nirim.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Kibbutz Nirim, which I went to. So she was.
She in the safe room for 8 hours. She was live tweeting with the New York Post. She was in the Washington Post and with the Journal that day. But her son-in-law or ex-son-in-law had her three granddaughters in a safe room. And when those terrorists came in, he shot them with an M16.
Right.
But one of the kids.
He was lucky that he only had 3 to face.
What?
How many terrorists did he neutralize?
1 or 2.
Oh, so anyway, so I was on that kibbutz, which was now an army base, and they were preparing for Gaza. And then when I was there, we were dancing, and then there was in the middle a security incident, and they rushed me out really fast. So they didn't want me hanging around there while they were doing maneuvers. There was a concern when I was there. They caught somebody because terrorists were hiding. They brought stuff to hide for a long time. Anyway, okay. So that's the discussion there. And now we say here they're called the 2 angels that came to Sodom. Rashi says U'alan, but above, and that's what I said at the beginning. When they came to Abraham, the Torah calls them men. So why above? Rashi has to explain this question. Why before were they called men, and now does the Torah call them angels? Rashi says earlier they were angels, but the Torah just calls them men because they look like men. But now, why are they called angels? And why earlier were they called men? So Rashi has to say, Kishahaisa Shechina imayim kira'am anashim. When the Shechina was with them, they were called men. Meaning to say that when God had come to visit Abraham, and so since God was there, we don't want to call the angels when they're in the presence of God, because that's disrespectful to God. So that's Rashi's answer. So there we have to call them men. It seems a little bit of a forced answer. So Rashi therefore gives a second explanation. A second explanation, the Rashi says, Davar Acher, Eitzel Abraham, when the angels were with Abraham, Shekocho Gadol, Abraham had enormous spiritual power. Abraham's relationship with the angels was like, almost equals. It calls them men. But vis-a-vis Lot, they were called angels. That's also a force because the simplest explanation is that they were men, and that's what other commentaries say. The first case they were men, and now they were angels. But Rashi has a few things that he has to explain. Why does it switch from 3 to 2, and why does it switch from men to angels? These are the problems that Rashi faces. But those who say
sorry, Rabbi. The Talmud argues that when he calls them Adonai, if that's the name of Chol or of Kodesh.
Right. So that's the question. Why it says Adonai, what were they Chol? Was that a reference to the God or a reference to just masters? But also those who say that they were men have to explain who were these people all of a sudden had the ability to prophesize. I mean, it doesn't tell us anything else about them. So therefore, and we do have angels that appear in the Bible prior to this. So it's most likely to assume that they were angels, because otherwise, what prophet was there running around making these prophecies? Okay. So
they're the same.
We don't know. The text doesn't.
I mean, this could be they could be 2 totally different
Most likely,
entities, right?
more than that,
Because-
it seems that they're most likely different entities from the literal text, because in the first place they're three, and now they're two. In the first place they're called men, and now they're called angels. That's why Rashi has pigeonholed into this explanation that one of the angels disappeared. That's why Rashi is forced to say it. But the reason why Rashi assumes that they're the same is because there's no break in the narrative. There's no paragraph break. The narrative is progressing. So
But there is that.
no,
With respect, the break is that Abraham has this whole long discussion, right?
but it goes straight in. There's no paragraph break in the narrative. The text goes straight. So it's logical to read it as one long story. That's the reason. Otherwise, there's no connection. And so the oldest explanation was, the initial commentary on the text. The oldest commentary was the Anshim Masorah, who divide up the Torah in paragraph breaks. Here, they don't make a paragraph break. In the English, in the Christian version, they make a chapter break here, but the rabbis don't have a chapter break. It's one long narrative. Yeah, Jerry, I see you patiently raising your hand. So please, Jerry, answer your question.
Yes, the Torah, a Torah scroll does not have any paragraphs except when there is some poetic text. So we
Let's stop there, Jerry. Let's just stop there for a second. Jerry, that's not accurate. The Torah has two types of paragraph breaks. One is called a samach, one is called a pei, a setuma or psucha. One is basically the equivalent of pressing enter on your keyboard and you start the new line. And the other is psucha, you basically like pressing tab, where you skip 9 spaces. So those are paragraph breaks, which are in the text of the Torah when you write the Torah. There are only 2 parashiyos in the Torah that don't have any paragraph breaks, but every other parasha has paragraph breaks.
Thank you.
Okay, I never want to correct Jerry because he's so much more wisdom than me, but I just wanted to stop that.
This is what comes from being a sober.
Yeah.
Hardly. That's an undeserved. I can't think of the word. Compliment. Not deserving.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your humility. So anyway, we just raised that question. So now it says vayavo shnei hamalachim, and the 2 angels. The 2 angels came to Sodom by Erev in the evening. Why does it need to say in the evening? Rashi says, why do the angels take so long to travel there? You're traveling from Hebron to Sodom. Basically, the angels could travel very fast. I don't know. It's hard to imagine. I mean, if they're going at a slow pace with traffic, taking the Egged bus, it could certainly take a full day to get there. But Rashi's bothered by it. Angels were angels of mercy. Umamtinin, and they were delaying. Shema yucho Avram ulamed aleim sanegoria. They were delayed lest Abraham was able to mount a defense. They were stalling. Now, this is ironic. How can angels stall? Angels don't have the ability to deviate from the mission of God. So it's not a consistent message about angels.
He wanted to give Abraham time to convince God.
The angels, but since when do the angels have that leeway? Okay. So Velot Yoshev B'Shar Sodom. Lot was sitting at the gates of Sodom. Rashi says, Yashav Ksiv. It's written without the Vav. This is ironic, because this is the second time in this parsha that Rashi comments on the fact that the word Yoshev is written without a Vav. The first time is with Avram at the beginning of the parsha. It says, the Avram Yoshev Pesach HaOel Kechol Mayom. And here it says it again. So both times Rashi says it should have been written with a Vav. Okay, fine. Why is there an Oto Ayom Minu Shofet Ala Shoftim? That day they appointed Lot as the judge over all of the people of Sodom. Can you imagine that job? He's in charge of Sodom, the judge over Sodom. Meaning to say, why does it have to tell us that he was the chief judge of Sodom? Meaning to say, he was the chief judge and they still attacked him. It's like people attacking a Supreme Court justice.
It was so wicked that no one would give justice. They just kind of pass it by.
And then, yeah, well, they were so wicked, and there was no sense of justice. Yes, Jerry.
If the Vav was there, what difference in meaning does the word Yoshev mean? With the
If Vav
Vav.
was there, we would have to say it means in the present tense, just describing Lot sitting at the gates of Sodom. But here, since it's in the past, it's telling us he had been appointed to sit. He had been appointed as the chief judge. That day he had been appointed.
Thank you.
Okay. So Rashi says, vayera Lot, and Lot saw them. So Rashi says that where did Lot know to sit at the entrance to the gates? Mi Beit Avram lamad lechazer orchem. He learned this from Avram. He was going out of his way from the house of Abraham. He learned to look for guests. So he learned this from Avram. I also want to say a word about this. There's right now, of all the great things going on in Israel, another aspect, which is not even being talked about, is this just tremendous aspect of hospitality. That people are hosting many, many people from the South in their homes. And from the North, that they've been relocated. So it's just a tremendous sense of hospitality. Okay, now the next pasuk, Vayomer, and Lot said, Hine na Adonai. He said, please, my master, Surinai al Beit Avdechem. Please turn around to your servant's house, Velinu v'rachatzu raglechem, and sleep and wash your feet, Mishkamtem v'alachtem v'darkechem. And then wake up and you'll go on your journey. Vayomru lo ki barachov nalin. They say, no, we're going to sleep in the street. Okay. Hine na Adonai. So what does Rashi say? Hine na atem adonimli. You are lords to me. Achar shavartem alai. Meaning to say, because you passed in my presence, I look at you as my master. That's the aspect of hospitality. Alternatively, he was saying, Hine na, behold, be careful. Tzrichem atem latet leiv al rasham alalu. He's saying Hine na is an expression of alarm. Be very careful. You need to pay attention to these wicked people, shelo yakiru bachem, that they do not notice you. V'zui eitza nechona. This is proper advice. Meaning to say, he's giving them advice, be very careful. Be very careful. So, by the way, I can even, we have Vitzal on the Zoom, so I can give him a question. Maybe he will. This is going to come to this Rashi. We'll get there today. That people say Ben Yehuda, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, was an absolute genius, and he knew so much Talmud, and he knew more than he forgot more than I'll ever know. But is in this story that the people who poke fun of him said he made a classic mistake, and as a result of this, a word came into the English language, into the Hebrew language. So that they say is just that we're going to get to this Rashi. It's like in that why was the decree made to destroy Sodom? The Gemara tells us that the decree was made to destroy Sodom because of, remember what it says in the Gemara? Remember what it says? Al riba achas. Al riba achas. Riba achas. Remember that Gemara?
Yeah, the girl in Sanhedrin, yeah.
Right. So there was a girl who they tortured. And Rashi says they tortured her by putting honey on her or a sticky substance. But Ben Yehuda thought that riba there meant jelly. So that's how modern Hebrew has the word for jelly is riba, because he misread that Gemara. So that's what? Did you ever know that?
And there's no turning back.
You can't
I
correct
never heard
it.
that.
Once the word comes into the English language, once the word comes into the language, it's done. The language can't go back. The people start using it. But that's how riba in modern Hebrew is jelly, because riba in the Talmud is a young woman. It's because he misread the Gemara. I mean, but he knew all the Gemara. Yeah, look, some have said that an even bigger miracle than the creation of Israel was the revitalization of the Hebrew language, the renaissance of the Hebrew language. It was not a spoken language for so many years. And all of a sudden, now it's the rich language.
Yep.
So we go on. So he says, so Lot says,
the virgin, right? The Christians interpreted a young girl as a virgin. And so
so there's a dispute about the word alma. About the word alma.
That's a whole
hawk too.
That's a whole shear within itself.
That's a whole hawk. So he says, Suruna al beit avdechem. Come, turn aside now, come to the house of your servant. Rashi says, Suru, which means turn aside, Rashi says, Akmu es haderech habesi. Go in a secret way, derech akalaton, by a roundabout route. Shelo yakiru, we don't want them to notice. Shatem nechnasim sham, we don't want them to know that you're going there. Therefore, it says suru. Okay, and then he says v'rinu v'rachatzu raglechem, sleep and wash your legs. Rashi says v'kidarkan shal b'nei adam. Rashi is going to notice, of course, that the order is switched from where it said by Abraham. So he says, do people first go to sleep and then wash up? That doesn't make sense. You first go to sleep and then wash up. It doesn't make sense. Avram, before they let them into their house, Avram said, wash your feet, because he was worried that they were worshiping idolatry with their feet. So this is what Lot was saying. If when they come into my house, I'll tell them right away to wash your feet. When the people of Stone will come, when they'll see that they wash their feet, they'll slander me. And they'll say, they've been in your house for 2 or 3 days, and you didn't let us know. Therefore, he said, therefore, he said, stay here, and only after you stay here do you wash your feet. We have to hide it. That's why he says, go to sleep first, and only afterwards does he say to wash it. It was a very dangerous situation to host the guests. Vayomer lo, and they said to him, no, we'll sleep in the street. Well, Avram Amru came Taseh, but to Abraham they said, we'll do like you said. Rashi says, from here we see that you can refuse the offer. Oh, Rabbi Yosef, did I cut you off before? I think I did. I'm sorry about that. You can refuse the offer.
I don't know.
Okay, we can refuse the offer of somebody small, i.e. but if somebody great asks you to do something, you can't refuse. And then they say, because we'll sleep in the street. Rashi says this in several places. Gemara says this in several places, that the word ki can mean one of four things, and here it means rather. We're not going to turn to your house, but we'll sleep in the street. We'll spend the night in the street.
I just wanted to ask, Avraham
Yes.
never spoke to them about going to sleep. The only other time that there was talk about sleep was with Rivka and the servant of Abraham.
No, but he said first he said wash your feet. That was the first thing he said to them.
Yeah, but he didn't tell them anything about sleeping by him.
That's an accurate statement. You're correct. But Rashi was saying, why would they go to sleep and then wash their feet? Doesn't make sense. Okay, we'll do one more pasuk and then we'll daven mincha. Oh, good afternoon, Michael. Good afternoon. Vayiftzar bam ma'od, and he urged them very much. Vayasuru elav, and they turned towards him. Vayavo al beito, they came to his house. Vayasla mishteh, and he made them a drink. Matzot afa, and they baked matzos vayochelu, and they ate. Rashi says they turned towards him. Ikmu asaderach, they wound their way. Letzad beito, towards his house. Umatzot afa, and he baked matzos. Because Pesach, it was Pesach. So
it was Pesach, even though the Jews hadn't left.
Yeah. So that, by the way, that indicates that there was this holiday, where they used to eat matzah, according to the Rashi and the Talmud. Going back many years, there was a concept that there was this holiday of redemption where they ate matzah, but it is a deep question. What does it mean that it was Pesach? So it's an interesting idea. And yeah, it's an interesting idea. Yes, Jerry.
Unleavened bread was eaten all over the Mediterranean area. Remember, it was only Egypt that had yeast that caused bread to rise.
So you're exactly right. You're exactly right. The problem here is not that it says that they bake matzos. The problem that we're talking about is, why does Rashi want to attribute it to Pesach? And that's based upon the Gemara. Rashi's quoting the Bereshis Rabbah, and the Gemara says that he was born. The Gemara likes to assume that they understood through prophecy that they were observing the holidays, but that Lot understood it. All right, it's a very interesting, it's a pregnant idea, and we'll have to think about it, and we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow with our discussion. Let's stop here and have a mincha. Shkoyach.